Hello, I'm Paul Westman, and this week I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. Normally, I only talk about series that I really enjoy and break down their settings, but one of the first series I did, Starship's Mage series, is a little bit different, and the reason why I'm going to be doing this a little bit differently is because in the Starship's Mage series, further down, basically we get a whole new information that completely changes how we can see the series as a whole, and but that involves quite a bit of spoilers. And I was trying to always avoid spoilers when I do my series setting breakdowns. So I've decided that I'm going to just start doing reviewing the books individually, or at least this series, maybe one or two a month, and that way I can actually talk more about some of the plot twists and changes in the series further on that I really enjoy. So this week I will be doing a review of book one of the Starship's Mage series, titled Starship's Mage. Alright. Now, just a quick refresh. You can go view my video on the setting of the series as well, but as a quick refresh, it's a space fantasy, which basically is different from your basically science fiction in that the space fantasy incorporates magic into a futuristic interstellar uh, system. So it's very similar into the way like how the Force works in Star Wars with the Jedi. If you replace Force with magic, then you've got yourself a space fantasy. And that's similar to what this is. Some of the subgenres in this first book, it's primarily focused upon a merchant ship traveling around trading goods, or at least attempting to, and also they become outlaws, and they have to end up running from the law. But one of the primary facets underlying all this is sort of a chosen one trope. Uh, basically, with how the main character, Damien Montgomery, is and his very unique abilities. Book length itself is approximately 432 pages. That's what it is on my Kindle. But if you use a larger one, or what a print book might be, there's some variance, but still decent sized book. And an important thing to note is that this is not a true book, it is an omnibus, which in essence means that instead of it being one single coherent story, it's actually a compilation of multiple short stories in a single greater arc. There's a total of 5 episodes in this book, so we'll get into that. I'll be discussing each episode, going over essentially some of the plot and key points throughout the book. Right now, this is a ship, and therefore we do deal with ship's crew, and those are basically the key characters throughout the series or throughout the book. First being Captain David Rice. He's the captain of the ship. He captains the trading ship Blue Jay. That is where the majority of the book takes place. Then we have the anonymous ship's mage, Damian Montgomery. He is the main character throughout most of the series, and he is where the book gets its name. Then we have our first officer. The rest of these are mostly more secondary characters, with our primary point of views being from David Rice and Damian Montgomery. But we have Jenna Campbell, the first officer, Narveer Singh, the first pilot, James Kellers, the chief engineer. Then we have Kelly Lamont, who's a junior engineer, and Mike Kelson, who's a junior pilot. Now, it should be noted that these are every single named crew member on the ship. And the ship is said to have approximately 50 crew. So there is a distinct lack of interaction with most of the crew. I can understand not wanting to put a lot of different people and name them and try to keep track of all of them. But the fact that there's only 7 total people on this crew that we know the names of is one of the issues I do have with this. Especially since how the majority of the crew members are all the senior officers of the ship. And then you have Kelly Lamont, who actually just ends up being Damian's girlfriend while he's on the ship. So one of the things, I'll mention that again towards the end, but let's go over the plot a little bit. First, we have episode 1. This is our main introduction to the ship and the crew, but it starts when Damian, who has just graduated from the Mage Academy, Sherwood system, and he just received qualifications to become a jump mage. His dream is to fly out among the stars, see the rest of the universe. But one of his biggest problems that he runs into is that all the other jump mages that he graduated with, they have family connections, and those family connections are able to get them jobs where on ships, whereas Damian does not. This is where we first are introduced to the concept of mages by blood versus mages by right. A mage by blood is basically when you have the ability to use magic in this series is a genetic factor, and many of the mage families and established families have already been able to build wealth and connections and power, and so they use that. But it is not always a dominant genetic factor, and that's where we get mages by right. And what that is when parents don't have any sort of magical ability, but they still have the sort of they have a non-dominant genetic condition that can lead to them having, or that can their kids end up being able to use magic. That is where mages by right come in. Now, mages by right are obviously seen, or they're obviously given fewer advantages because they don't have the same sort of familial connections that a mage by blood has. But they're still given a lot of government support because the government is primarily mage run and favors the mages a lot more. Furthermore, that is also to encourage mages to basically not turn to crime to be able to fulfill their basic needs, because a person who's able to use magic is a lot more capable of doing damage than someone who is not. All right. After that, we shift over to the Blue Jay, where we meet Captain David Rice, and they are under attack by pirates. This is due to a long history that David has with the primary criminal enterprise known as the Blue Star Syndicate. He is responsible for the death of their leader's son, so that has led to a long-term grudge against him. And during this pirate attack, in a last-ditch maneuver, their ship's mage, who is Kenneth McLaughlin, he overextends his magic by teleporting them one last time before he has recovered from the last one, and he kills himself. This is our first introduction to the dangers of thalamic burnout, which is somewhat relevant throughout the entire series. But then Blue Jay does arrive at Sherwood, and when they do, they are blacklisted from being able to get another ship's mage. Because Kenneth McLaughlin, he is the youngest son of the governor of the Sherwood system, who is the elected leader of the system. And naturally, he blames David for the death of his son. So he uses his influence to prevent David from getting another ship's mage, which essentially kills his ability to travel and be a merchant ship, because the only way to travel between the stars is through the use of magic. Now we're shift back to Damien, and Damien is told about the Blue Jay through Grace McLaughlin, who happens to be the granddaughter of the governor, but doesn't necessarily agree with all of his decisions. And what happened was David saw the gentle rains of summer, and he happens to know the captain there. So he asked if there was any way to go around the Mages Guild in Sherwood, and captain of the Gentle Rains of Summer, he inquired with his new ship's mage that he just got out of the academy, Grace McLaughlin, if she knew anybody, and Grace, who happened to be Damien's girlfriend throughout the academy, decided to recommend him. And that is how Damien initially is hired on to the Blue Jay. Then Blue Jay, they find some more cargo, then they leave. Now, as they're departing, we're given a few almost slice of life of them preparing to leave, and then you have Damien, and this is his first real ship. First time he actually gets to do his job, and part of his job is to examine the jump matrix of the ship. Now, this is his first time because mages are generally not given a whole lot of leeway when it comes to the jump matrix of the ship. They're given a pattern that the matrix is supposed to follow, and anything that veers away from that pattern is considered a danger, and they're very strongly encouraged not to look more into it. Now, Damien, he's a bit special for a mage, and we don't find out exactly what that is till the end, but one of the things he can do is he can actually see the flow of magic instead of just looking at the runes and having to look up what the runes are and what they're supposed to be able to do from that. Instead, Damien is able to actually see how magic interacts with the runes. Now, what that leads to is while he's inspecting this jump matrix, he notices a few odd things about it that sort of seem to make it more inefficient and seem to not exactly fit in with what he thinks the jump matrix should accomplish. But it is obviously still part of the standard jump matrix that is used in all starships. So he lets it go and just continues exploring the ship and meets with engineers, meets the rest of the senior crew, and then they end up departing. Now, as they're leaving, they go along a pretty standard route, but once they get to the part where they were ambushed or where they had been attacked by pirates before, pirates come back and they ambush them again. You might think, well, why didn't the Navy come and clear out the pirates before, after they were reported? And the reason for that given is because what the pirates did is they would head back, or they would jump a certain amount of distance away, then they would turn off basically most of their missions, and that essentially cloaks them from any sort of immediate active scanning from the area of the attack. Then as they're waiting there, they wait till they see a ship jump in, then they jump and try to jump right on top of the other ship and attack them from surprise. Now in this attack, they don't quite get the jump calculations correct, so that gives some time for the Blue Jay to start to run away. But the pirate ship does end up crippling the Blue Jay, and in a last-ditch desperate maneuver, as Damien is working his magic through the simulacrum of the ship, which is basically what connects the ship to the jump matrix and amplifies that spell, he realizes that the jump matrix has those inconsistencies he spotted earlier, and what those do is that they prevent any spell other than the teleport spell from being amplified. So what he can do is, if he goes to each of those parts and basically breaks the chain and breaks where they connect to the rest of the jump matrix, he would be able to amplify any spell throughout the simulacrum, and turn it into a true amplifier, which would make it on par with many of the Navy warships, like the destroyers and the cruisers. Now, this is not something that is known to people that it is possible, and only a very select few people would even be able to do that. And Damien manages to accomplish the task, and they manage to escape, and that is the end of episode 1. Next, we get to episode 2. There, it starts off with a recap of what's going on. We're also reminded that modifying a jump matrix is considered highly illegal, although we aren't necessarily informed exactly how illegal it is at the beginning, because many of the crimes that mages commit or that are things that are criminal according to Mage law, which is separate from human law, aren't necessarily given specific punishments because it's more of an encouragement to not break the law at all, rather than weighing the options of whether the law is worth breaking. Then once again, we're reminded that the ability to turn a jump matrix into an amplifier is not known and should not be possible according to common knowledge. But after they get to their location on the planet they were going to deliver their goods that they picked up in Sherwood, the senior officers are eventually invited to a dinner. And they talk mostly about things of no consequence, because this is more or less just a plot device to get all the senior officers off the ship. And then the lower rank crew, who are trying to help Damien out and make his job a little easier, they allow mages from the port or from the station to go on and inspect the jump matrix, make sure it's working, make Damien's job easier. Because they aren't told that Damien modified it or that the modifications are highly illegal. And this leads to Damien immediately getting arrested for 50 counts of attempted murder as soon as they get back from the dinner. Now, the reason why it's 50 counts of attempted murder is because modifying a jump matrix should not be possible. And if you attempt to jump with a modified jump matrix, 99% of the time, the ship's just going to blow up. So they consider every person on that ship to be a count of attempted murder by Damien. And the only punishment that they come up with is to call for a hand of the Mage King, which are the most powerful, and they are the law enforcers of this universe. They are called in. Fortunately, one is nearby, and will take a few days, but their goal is to strip Damien's magic away, because obviously they consider that he is very irresponsible with the magic and should not be allowed to use it. Alright, now Captain Rice, he's very much against this because naturally Damien saved their lives. They're not going to stand for it. So he actually gets in contact with a local criminal faction to help break Damien out of prison. The criminals agree to do so, with the condition being that when they break Damien out of the jail, they'll also break out a few other of their people as well. Now the jailbreak goes off for the most part without a problem, and then they all board the ship and begin to make their escape. Now, as they're escaping, Captain Rice, he does inform that the information broker that he used to get in contact with the criminals, that there is a hand nearby, and so it would be more advisable for them all to basically hide as well as they possibly can. Otherwise, they're going to be in a lot more trouble than just trying to escape in the space station. And when the hand does arrive, she hand Alara Steely, she does allow the Blue Jay to escape because, unlike most mages, she suspects that Damien is special, and one of the first bit of proof that she needs is whether or not his modified jump matrix actually works, because she knows the ability to modify jump matrix is considered a royal secret, but because of her proximity to the Mage King, she's aware of this, and she knows that if Damien has successfully done so, then that means that he is not just a normal mage, and it would be far better to recruit him rather than try to steal his magic away. So she allows the Blue Jay to jump, and that allows them to escape. And that is all of episode 2. We get to episode 3, where we do get some more lore about the Protectorate and the runic transceiver arrays, which is the only method possible of interstellar communication in the books. And then we also get another recap. We reintroduce characters again. Now, the information broker that Captain Rice warned, as sort of thanks for the warning, they're told to go to Legatus for a job. It's an easy way to get plenty of money, which they're going to need because they're merchant ships. Now, Legatus is basically the capital of the Unarcana worlds. The Unarcana worlds being worlds that, while they allow mages within the system, they do not allow any sort of magic or mages on the surface of the planets. And part of the reason for that is because mages are not held to human law. That was part of the compact that was drafted up by the first Mage King. He said mages can only be judged by other mages, and this is where we really start to delve more in depth into why that distinction is a part of the society. We are also introduced to the concept of augments, which are essentially cyborgs, humans who have used cybernetic and other mechanical parts to augment their own abilities, and specifically, augments are used as mage slayers. They're humans who fight on par with mage for the most part. And then we get a more in-depth explanation of the Olympus Project and the Eugenicist Wars. I brought this up in my setting review, and the Olympus Project and the Eugenicist Wars are essentially a group of people decided to sort of breed magic back into the human race, and they committed many atrocities in their attempts to do so, but eventually they were overthrown by one of their subjects, who became the first Mage King and established the Protectorate of Mars. And what magic allowed the mages to do was it allowed, based upon what the eugenicists had developed, mages were able to then teleport people faster than light, which opened up the stars to the human race. However, that afforded them sort of a privilege in that mages were the only ones that could allow for the travel, and the Mage King leveraged that as a way to put mages in a position of authority over the Protectorate. Now, the Unarcana stars, they didn't necessarily like that because essentially what that did was it meant the eugenicist, in their mind, it meant that the eugenicists won, despite the fact that the mages were, and quite directly, the greatest victims of the eugenicists. The ideal that the eugenicists were striving for would be fulfilled within the Protectorate, and the Unarcana stars, they didn't necessarily like that. And while there were some who believed that better compromise could be met, there's still a lot of distaste. There's a lot of racism and bigotry throughout that. So that is a general source of conflict throughout many of the books in the series. And this is the book where we finally get a direct introduction to Mikhail Azur. Mikhail Azur is the leader of the Blue Star Syndicate, and it is his son that was killed indirectly by David Rice, and that is why he's been hunting David Rice down. We don't get too many direct interactions yet. This is just his introduction, but he becomes far more prevalent later in the book. Now, the initial job of the Blue Jay when they arrive at Legatus is to transport troops and planes. Legatus is essentially funding multiple resistances and shadow wars throughout the systems. And what happens is, after they pick up all the troops and they're heading off, about halfway through, the troops pull out guns and, while they technically take over the ship, they do try to act in an honorable manner, and they say that the destination that they were initially given for their transport was just a false trail, and instead they're going to be going to a different planet to drop off all this stuff. But as a show of good intentions, or less bad intentions, they do increase the amount of money that they're willing to offer the Blue Jay. Now, the problem is that the new planet that they're going to is far more racist and dangerous for mages, and definitely a worse place than they would have been willing to go to otherwise. So when they do finally arrive at the planet known as Chrysanthemum, what they do is essentially David Rice tries to set up an insurance policy of sorts. He brings down basically he keeps one of his best combat oriented or combat trained crew members, Narveer Singh, up on the ship, but he does not, and he brings Damien down during the final delivery, and there's sort of a party celebration that they're all invited to, but they suspect a trap. say what they do is they do not, or they essentially switch Damien and Narvir's names, and so that the people on the ground don't realize that it is a mage that they brought down. And essentially, what happens is the trap goes off. The people of Chrysanthemum, they start attacking because there is still the bounty from the Blue Star Syndicate, and they're trying to get money off of that. So there's a battle as the crew members escape back to the ship, where they discover that there was another attempt during what happened was a refueling barge showed up and was full of mercenaries who tried to take over the ship, but Narvir Singh, being well trained, and he had picked up multiple weapons and arms from Legatus, and he was able to repel the boarders. So, but fortunately, he did die in the process. So that is where episode 3 ends, as they're escaping. And there is one last show of good faith from the troops that were brought in from Legatus, as they had discovered a flaw in the ships that were delivered, so that those ships couldn't be used against the Blue Jay as they escaped. So was a nice demonstration of moral ambiguity throughout this, and basically people with principles who know that they're working with in association with some people without. So then we get to episode 4. Episode 4 starts with the funeral. Now, this doesn't recap too much, but then they decide to travel to Amber, which is another system, and the purpose of this trip is to pick up a bunch of gear and stuff that some outer systems might need or want, and what David plans to do is to go on what is known as a fringe run. So essentially, the entire area is too hot for them. They're being hunted by pirates, being hunted by the government. So they basically want to just get out of sight for a few years. So they go to Amber. Amber is very well known as being a place where you build where pirate ships get built, and they only very, very, very loosely will adhere to any amount of the protectorate law. So essentially, they know that Amber is one of the few places where they can go where they won't be arrested. And that is where they do run into some bounty hunters, but because they are bounty hunters and not law enforcement, they are able to fight back, essentially. Then, after that fight with the bounty hunters, they do meet Keiko Alabaster, who is a very prominent businesswoman, and she is also a weapons salesman. Basically, she is the point of contact that they use to get all the speculative gear that they should be able to sell on the fringe run. Now, because they're in a bit of a hurry, Keiko does have to pull a few favors, and so naturally she asks for a favor in return. And basically, their job after meeting with her is to deliver weapons to a gunrunner who will deliver them to a rebellion. Okay. Now we are once again reminded about the fact that both, or that the Blue Star Syndicate under Mikhail Azure has a bounty out on them, and it is not just a bounty on David Rice now. There's also it's also specified that he has a bounty on the ship and on Damien Montgomery, with Damien to be taken alive and the ship to be taken intact, which is just used to demonstrate that he has discovered that the ship has been modified by Damien, and he is interested in essentially acquiring Damien and turning all of his jump-capable vessels into amplifiers, which would make a nearly unstoppable pirate fleet. Now, we also do start switching to the Hand, Alara Steely, and Mikhail Azure. We see their point of views at multiple points throughout this episode, as we see they start becoming far more active in their searches for the Blue Jay. And because the Blue Jay is on amber, and that allows them to do is gives a solid starting point for their search to go. So then the Blue Jay goes off and they begin their gun running for Keiko. This is also where we're introduced to trackers, which is a very rare group of humans who are capable of basically seeing where a ship has jumped to. It's normally considered impossible to track the jump of a ship, but these people have a very unique ability to see it and to almost instinctively track it with a fairly high degree of accuracy. Now, one of these trackers is a bounty hunter who starts chasing the Blue Jay, and after several encounters, they do end up destroying the bounty hunter, and with the help of the gunrunner that they were supposed to meet, and then they pass the guns along, and as appreciation for their help, the gunrunner directs the Blue Jay towards a place called Darkport. Now, Darkport is basically the home base of many criminal organizations, and it is considered lawless and outside of protectorate jurisdiction. It's also a hidden place, very hard to find. So the Blue Jay decides that it might be safe for them to go for a time and rest. And that's where episode 4 ends. And well, actually, it should be said that while the episode ends with the Blue Jay heading towards Starport, we're also shown Laura Steely has gone to Amber and is able to convince Keiko to let them know or to tell her where the Blue Jay is going. She's able to convince them or to convince her that the Protectorate is no longer after Damien or the Blue Jay, and that allows Keiko to direct Laura to the battle where she runs into the Gunrunner, who also is able to give her the location of Darkport. Then we get to the final episode, episode 5. This episode begins with the hand not going directly on a chase, because since Darkport is basically a pirate hub and has a lot of ships, a lot of pirates, she knows that she can't go there by herself and the ship that she's been using. So she backtracks to a protectorate planet to assemble an entire fleet to take on Darkport. Meanwhile, Mikhail Azur is also on his way, and he does not have the same limitations that the Navy has, so he's continuing on his chase far more directly. Then we have the Blue Jay arriving at Darkport, buying a few upgrades for defenses, and we also have Damien acquiring a Rune of Power. Basically, this is said to have been cut off of the skin of a dead hand, and it is said that this rune is able to give power to, or to vastly increase the magical ability of whoever has it on. Now, Damien, being able to see the flow of magic, sees that the Rune of Power, while it can do what it's advertised to be able to do, it is very specifically tied to the magic of the person it was put on. And so if that exact rune was put on someone else, that person would die. But Damien, being able to see that, he suspects that he may be able to modify it for himself, but either way, he buys it because he believes that while the Protectorate might have been after him for false reasons, they are not necessarily the bad guys. So he thinks that he presents the argument that it should be returned to the Protectorate and buried with respect. Then Mikhail Azur shows up in his cruiser, and he starts an assault on Darkport. Now, the pirates at Darkport, they don't like this at all, and they start organizing a massive pirate fleet to try and take him out. But Azur has been using a cruiser, which is one of the most powerful ships in the Protectorate, or it's the equivalent of one of the most powerful ships in the Protectorate. So that causes a lot of issues, and Azur is able to take out the vast majority of the fleet and to severely damage Darkport before they spot the Blue Jay retreating, and then they decide that basically following the Blue Jay is more valuable to them than the complete destruction of Darkport. So while they do destroy the majority of it, cause significant damage, they do leave before it is completely gone. Then, while Blue Jay and Michaela Azur are on their chase, the Navy then ends up arriving at Darkport. Much to their surprise, they no longer need a fleet to take out Darkport, and the leaders, who are essentially mafia members, they offer to the complete surrender on the condition that the Navy tries to rescue as many people as possible, because the asteroid that the port was in has no more life support, and people are starting to die. It is also at this point that we are introduced to Amiri, who is a tracker, and she volunteers to go onto Alar's ship and track the Mikhail Azur through his jumps, so that way the Navy can continue their chase, because she wants revenge on him because one of the ships he destroyed had her brother on it. So then we get several scenes where the Blue Jay is, they almost catch up to the Blue Jay, and then a couple times Azur does catch up, but runs into traps left by Captain Rice. Then in a last final desperate maneuver, Damien decides to inscribe a rune of power onto himself. We are given the details of exactly how this happened, and he explains exactly what he's doing. He does get some help of sorts by Kelly Lamont, and he manages to successfully do so, which greatly amplifies his powers approximately tenfold. It also greatly extends his ability to use the amplifier on the ship, and using that, he manages to destroy the cruiser that Michaela Azur was using. But in a last-ditch effort, Azur launches all of his missiles at the Blue Jay as soon as he realized that his ship was going to be destroyed, and that left the Blue Jay in a position where it was going to be destroyed even after the cruiser dies. But in a perfectly timed maneuver, the Navy is able to jump in between the missiles and the Blue Jay, and they manage to defeat that final wave of missiles and save their lives, essentially. Now that's the major climax of the story, but then there is one last part, and I call this the epilogue, even though it's not separate from episode 5, but this last part of the book is really the main setup for the series. So this entire book was just used as an introduction for Damien. So what we get to in this epilogue, essentially Laura Steele, after she shows up, she tells everyone, she goes onto the Blue Jay itself and informs them that the Navy's going to destroy the ship. There's nothing that nothing that can change their minds, because, as is explained, any sort of rune scribe or anybody familiar with runes would be able to look at what Damien did to the jump matrix and be able to copy it on any other ship. So essentially that is a security risk that cannot be allowed to continue. So they will destroy it, but because the Navy is the good guys, they're allowing everyone to basically take all their stuff and evacuate the ship. Because their goal is to end the threat, not to destroy their livelihoods. So she also offers Captain Rice a new ship and monetary compensation for their new business, or to basically hold them over while the new ship is getting repaired or refurbished. Because, like I said, the goal was not to end his livelihood. The goal was to end the threat to the protectorate that the Blue Jay poses. Now, this is continued on in the Captain Rice's journeys on his new ship and with his group are continued on the Starship's Mage Red Falcon series. So that is where that splits off there. And then we get into the meat of a large portion of the series. That is that Damien Montgomery is a special type of mage. He is called a rune write. And that allows him to do far more than any other mage normally would. And while he is, well, basically, because of the way he acted, while he thought he was considered an outlaw, he is given a choice. He can either stay with Captain Rice and go on the new ship, or he can go with Alara Steely and receive actual training of his abilities from another rune write and someone who knows exactly what he's capable of. Damien does end up choosing to go with Alara Steely, and she takes him to be trained by the Mage King of Mars himself. And that is where the story ends. And that is essentially where the rest of the series continues. So we have Captain Rice on his sort of spin-off series with the Red Falcon, and then we have the continuation of Starship's Mage, which is following Damien Montgomery. Now, things that the book could have done better. First off, it's an omnibus, and what that means is that each episode you sort of get a recap of the last one, which we just read. We also get reintroduced to all the characters, and a lot of that stuff, it could have been changed up when it was compiled into a book. I can understand why it was kept as is, as it's almost an homage to science fiction of the past. But I think the story would have flowed much more smoothly had it been rewritten into a book format. Next, this is an introduction, and it is rather inconsistent with the sort of the genre of the rest of the series, as it becomes more of an almost military space opera rather than the trader ship, and that sort of inconsistency does cause some issues when I would recommend an entire series, because the first book's different from a large portion of the rest of the series. So while you might like book one, you might not necessarily like book two. Or if you don't like book one, you might find the book 2 far more enjoyable. So that's one issue I have. And another thing is the naming of the series. The series is just named after the first book, but as a series name, it doesn't fit at this point. So yeah, last real big qualm I have is that we're only introduced to 7 named people on a crew of over 50. And of those 7, 2 are the main characters of the story. 3 are the rest of the senior officers of the crew. The 4th is the girlfriend of one of the main character, and the last person is just the one who replaced the one character on the crew who died. So I would have liked it better if the more of the crew had been fleshed out, made to seem a bit more interactive, made it seem a bit more alive. But what we got was just kind of a very isolated group within the crew. So I think it could have done a better job of that. Although Glynn Stewart does do a better job with his side characters and groups going forward in the series, but that's one issue that I can easily see people having with this book. Now, things that are done well, because we want to end this on a higher note. There is main character growth is very well paced. It is thoughtful. It is not just randomly. For instance, while in Amber, Damien decides he wants to learn more combat magic because he hasn't been trained in combat magic, and considering that people have been trying to kill them, he needs to learn more. He needs to improve himself, so he buys books on it. He learns more. He becomes better at it. At Darkport, he finds the rune. He uses his abilities to be able to determine what the rune is capable of and why it hasn't worked in the past and how he can make it work. So it's pretty decent character growth for the main characters, although with the side characters it's not quite as much. They're more just there. So but the main character growth was done very well. The explanation of magic in the series is another thing that's done very well. We get it fleshed out quite a bit. We get hints at the origins of magic, where it comes from, how it applies, and how it's used in general. Some things that are done to improve people's magic. It is a very interesting magic system. And all in all, I think this is a very good introduction to the universe of the Starship's Mage. We see a variety of planets. We see a variety of government systems. We see that it's not just all honky-dory and happy in every place. There's issues. We do see corruption in governments. We see honor among thieves. There's a wide spectrum of morality, which is a very sort of realistic depiction of humanity. So, all in all, very good introduction to the universe. A lot of interesting places to see. That is why I enjoyed the setting. But we will get, as I do for the books, I'll be able to explain exactly why some of the twists that really make the series so much better than just the first book. So that's that. And that is where we're going to end. I'll probably get back to the series setting breakdowns next week. Like I said, I'm probably only going to do 1 or 2 of the Starship's Mage reviews per month. And go ahead, you can check out any of the old VODs. I upload them to YouTube of the same name as the channel. So I will see you next time.